All right, let's dive in. Today, we're heading down under Arnia to explore how climate change is impacting biodiversity in New South Wales, Australia.
It's a fascinating topic, really.
You might think, oh, another climate change episode, but this one, trust me, has some unexpected twists.
Definitely. It's more than just saving those iconic Aussie animals,
Hmm.
koalas and
Yeah.
kangaroos.
Right,
We're
exactly.
talking about whole ecosystems at risk, and the impacts go way beyond what most people imagine.
That's what's so cool about the reports and research we dug into for this deep dive. It's like an ecological thriller, honestly.
Yeah.
1 million species, some unique to Australia, facing all these crazy threats.
Yeah, Australia's biodiversity is truly one of a kind, but that also makes it super vulnerable.
Right.
The sheer number of different plants and animals is mind-blowing. But what's really amazing is the delicate balance between them.
Yeah, the sources really highlight that, and it's not something I'd fully grasped before.
Hmm.
It's not just about like how many different species there are, but also the genetic diversity within each species.
Right.
And that creates this incredible tapestry of ecosystems.
And that tapestry is what provides us with ecosystem services.
Okay, ecosystem services, what does that even mean?
It's a fancy way of saying all the good stuff nature does for us, basically.
Yeah.
Things we rely on for survival. Clean air, clean water, fertile soil, food, you name it. All powered by a thriving biodiversity.
So hang on, are you saying that losing a few bugs or plants actually impacts like my daily life?
It's much bigger than you might think.
Okay.
Imagine no clean water, crops failing because pollinators are gone, diseases running wild because natural defenses are weakened.
Whoa. Okay, that's painting a pretty grim picture.
That's what we risk when biodiversity declines.
Got it. So it's all connected.
Exactly.
But how is climate change specifically messing things up in New South Wales? Is it really that different from other places?
New South Wales is already facing a biodiversity crisis with 1,000 species at risk,
Wow, 1,000.
even before you factor in climate
Okay.
change. But now picture this. Climate change is like this multi-pronged attack on these ecosystems.
Okay.
We're talking severe droughts, those massive bushfires, rising sea levels swallowing the coast, and even the ocean becoming more acidic.
I remember those black summer bushfires a few years back. Those were just devastating.
Exactly. And those fires are like a warning sign of what's at stake.
Right.
But beyond the immediate impact, there are these more subtle changes happening because of something called climatic envelopes.
Climatic envelopes. That sounds pretty technical.
It is a bit jargony, yeah, but imagine a species' ideal habitat as like a Goldilocks zone,
Okay, I like that.
where everything's just right for it to thrive. That's its climatic envelope.
Gotcha.
The specific range of temperatures, rainfall, all those conditions.
So it's like their comfort zone.
Exactly.
Okay.
But here's the thing. Climate change is shifting those envelopes, like it's moving that Goldilocks zone around.
So they got to keep up or else.
Yeah, it's like a race against time.
Are any species actually adapting to these rapid changes, though?
Believe it or not, some are. You've got microorganisms with those super fast life cycles.
Right.
Some invertebrates are pretty adaptable too.
Okay.
But a lot of species, especially those picky eaters with very specific habitat needs,
Yeah.
they're facing a much tougher challenge.
The reports had a great example to show how even small changes can ripple through the whole ecosystem.
Oh yeah, what was it?
It was like a butterfly effect, you know?
It's all about the interconnectedness of nature.
There's this insect that feeds on a particular type of plant, right?
Mm.
Climate change hits, and suddenly that plant isn't doing so well. Maybe there's less of it, or it's not as nutritious.
Right.
The insect population takes a hit, and then the animals that rely on that insect for food, they start struggling too.
And so on, up the food chain.
Yeah, like a domino effect.
Exactly, but on an ecological scale.
And the scary part is we don't always know which dominoes are going to fall.
It's true. Predicting those cascading effects is a huge challenge for scientists.
So before we totally spiral into ecological despair here, are there any solutions? Is there anything happening in New South Wales that gives us some hope?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot going on, actually.
Okay, good. I was getting worried there for a sec.
Let's talk about some of those solutions next.
Yeah, let's dive into that. So amidst all the challenges, what are some of the solutions happening in New South Wales?
Well, one major focus is on building ecosystem resilience.
Okay, ecosystem resilience. What exactly does that mean?
It's about making those ecosystems tougher,
Yeah.
like able to withstand shocks and bounce back.
So less fragile, more adaptable.
Exactly. The reports talk about restoring habitats, connecting fragmented landscapes, all to boost biodiversity and make things more resilient.
Makes sense. A stronger ecosystem is a better chance, right?
Right.
What about the species that are already struggling, though?
For those highly threatened species, there are targeted interventions.
Okay, like what?
Things like captive breeding programs, where they breed endangered animals in a safe environment and then release them back into the wild.
I've heard about that, yeah.
Or habitat restoration, creating or improving areas specifically for those species.
Giving them a helping hand.
Exactly. And remember those climate refuges we mentioned earlier?
Yeah, those safe havens.
They're crucial for protecting biodiversity, and scientists are working hard to identify and protect them.
So they're finding these pockets of hope in a changing landscape.
That's a great way to put it.
What if those refuges become isolated, though? How do species move between them if things get tough?
That's where habitat corridors come in.
Habitat corridors. Okay, tell me more about that.
Basically, these are like wildlife highways, strips of connected habitat.
Oh, interesting.
They allow species to move as the climate changes.
Clever.
It's like building bridges between those islands of suitable habitat.
It sounds like a huge project, though.
It does take a lot of planning and effort, but it's happening. Conservation groups, landowners, everyone's working together to make it happen.
That's great to hear.
These corridors often follow natural features, like rivers or mountains,
Makes sense.
creating safe pathways for animals.
And speaking of planting, the sources mention climate-ready revegetation.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting one.
What's that all about?
It's about being smart with the plants we choose, making sure they're ready for the future climate.
Future-proofing our ecosystem.
Exactly. Choosing species that can handle more heat, more drought, whatever's coming their way.
Smart thinking.
So instead of just planting whatever grew there before, we're looking ahead, picking plants that will thrive in the decades to come.
So those are the big ideas, but are there any specific programs happening in New South Wales? You know, stuff on the ground?
Absolutely. The sources highlight some great examples.
Like what?
There's the Saving Our Species program, a New South Wales government initiative focused on conserving threatened species.
I've heard of that one, yeah.
And then there's all the work being done by NSW National Parks, managing those huge protected areas.
Yeah, they do amazing work.
And we can't forget the national strategy, Australia's Strategy for Nature 2019-2030.
Right, the big picture plan.
Exactly. And they have a website called Australia's Nature Hub. Tons of resources there.
That's good to know. So it's encouraging that there's this coordinated effort.
Yeah, definitely.
But it makes you wonder, with all these scientists, researchers, government agencies involved, is there a role for ordinary people to play?
Oh, absolutely. Individual action is super important.
It can feel like these issues are so big, you know?
Yeah.
And you wonder, like, what can one person even do?
I get that, but honestly, individual action is so important.
Really?
Oh, yeah. The reports actually emphasize community involvement.
Okay, so what can people actually do?
Well, for one, there are these awesome citizen science projects.
Citizen science?
Yeah, you can help with real research, like tracking endangered animals
Wow, that's pretty cool.
or monitoring ecosystems, all while enjoying nature.
So you're, like, hiking with a purpose.
Exactly. And the sources mention some great tools to help.
Oh, yeah.
There's this website, Restore and Renew.
Okay.
It's all about restoring and protecting local ecosystems.
So, like, practical tips.
Totally. And then there's NSW Niche Finder, which helps you figure out suitable habitats for different species.
Oh, that's handy. Especially if you're into gardening.
Right? It's like turning your backyard into a mini sanctuary.
Speaking of gardens, what about just planting native species? Does that really make a difference?
It totally does. Native plants provide food and shelter for native animals. They help pollinators.
Right.
It's a simple thing with a big impact.
And even if you just have a little balcony, you can still do something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Every little bit counts.
What about folks who aren't in gardening, though?
Supporting local conservation organizations is another great option.
Right, those groups doing the hands-on work.
Exactly. Donating, volunteering, even just spreading the word. It all makes a difference.
It really does seem like everyone can play a part.
We all have a role to play, for
I'm
sure.
feeling more hopeful already.
That's great. It's easy to get overwhelmed. But remember, protecting biodiversity isn't just about saving cute animals.
It's about the whole interconnected web of life.
Exactly. Those ecosystem services we talked about, they rely on a thriving biodiversity.
And we rely on them.
Precisely. So while the challenges are real, there's also a lot of hope.
It's been a real eye-opener, this whole deep dive.
I'm glad. What surprised you the most?
I think just how much is being done, and all the different ways people can get involved.
Absolutely. So for everyone listening, What resonated with you? What surprised you about this connection between climate change and biodiversity in New South Wales?
Maybe it was the ingenuity of those adaptation strategies or the resilience of certain species.
Or maybe it was the power of individual action.
We encourage you to check out those resources we mentioned, like Australia's Nature Hub.
And delve deeper into what's happening in your own local area.
Remember, even small actions can have a ripple effect.
Plant a native tree, support a conservation group, or tell your friends about what you learned today.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of biodiversity and climate change in New South Wales.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, stay curious and stay engaged.